But it's actually deceptively hard to create a cute slug.
Yes. Captain's Pod, Stardate 411082.2. Welcome aboard the Starship's Enterprise, and thank you for joining us as we take a brief shortly from the world of CinemaSins to explore the universe of Star Trek. I am your Captain Ian Whittington, and with me, as always, she is like a cathedral that is summoned from the sky. It is Deneé Hughes.
Listen. What you don't know, beloved podcaster, is that we're recording the intro after recording the bulk of this episode, and Ian has just done something absolutely mind-bendingly crazy. But you'll find out that when the show starts, I suppose.
I did some time travel-y stuff and referenced something that hasn't happened yet. That is what we do here. Ambassador, how are you?
I'm doing really, really good. Without giving too much away, we just finished up the episode completely, and I'm on a Star Trek Cloud 9 right now, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear this episode. So I don't even want to mess around too much.
No.
I just want to jump right into it.
So we don't have an episode to review today. Instead, we have so sorry. Although I'm not really sorry, because what we have instead is something much, much, much more special. So let's head over to 10 Forward to meet a special guest. Welcome to 10 Forward, everyone, where we're joined by a very, very special guest. No, it's not Ambassador Deneé. It is Aaron J. We'll pronounce his last name correctly, Waltke.
That's absolutely correct.
Yes.
That's the American version of a Prussian last name that has way too many consonants in it. So well done.
As an Englishman, I am used to having too many vowels and consonants in all of our words. Colour, honour, all of them. Yeah, nothing makes sense. Well, we haven't come to talk about linguistics, although I'm sure we could. Aaron is the executive producer and writer for Star Trek Prodigy. Now, before I even let Aaron talk or say a single word...
Which is great.
Yep,
That's
this
great
is why we
thing
have
to do.
guests on here.
Yeah. Before I let the captain talk.
Wait,
sorry.
what? I just want to say how incredible, and Aaron, you can close your ears if this makes you feel uncomfortable, just how incredible Prodigy is. It is absolutely the best. It's so, so good. I came to it super duper late only a few weeks ago and binged it in about 2 days. But if anyone hasn't watched it yet, 100% super duper high recommend watch it, including Deneé, who I'm going to chuck under a bus because you haven't watched it yet.
No, I didn't watch it, but that's part of the joy of the interview process for me, is I get to learn things and then pretend like I don't come off a dumbass at the same time.
Hopefully I don't spoil anything for you. But thank you for those compliments. As a Midwesterner, I'm still trying to figure out how to accept praise, but I appreciate it.
Right?
We put a lot of love into the series, and it's been so wonderful over these last few months as it kind of rolls out to different regions of the world to see how it's been embraced by so many, hardcore Star Trek fans and new audiences alike. We obviously took some really bold swings, especially at the beginning, starting so far outside of Federation space and anything recognizable as Starfleet. But as people kind of took the ride with us, it's been really fun to see people like, oh, that's where they're going with it. I can't wait for everybody to see where we take it.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait. It's bold swings is right. So as this is kind of perfect because Deneé hasn't had a chance to watch the show yet. To someone who hasn't seen it yet, how would you pitch the show? How would you describe Prodigy in an elevator pitch that I'm sure you actually had to give at some point?
Sure. So, the traditional sort of modus operandi of Star Trek is to explore strange new worlds and seek out, strange life and new civilizations. But this is, I think, the first show that has done that in reverse, where we start with those strange life and civilizations with characters that know hardly anything about Starfleet or the Federation and the utopian ideals that it represents, but then happen to come across a derelict Starfleet Federation ship that they think is their ticket to sort of freedom and salvation. But along the way, a holographic representation of Captain Janeway as their emergency training hologram mistakes them for cadets, and they have to fake it till they make it until they make their way back to Federation space.
Oh my God.
It's so fun.
That's delightful. That kind of reminds me of a movie that I saw when I was a kid that really freaked me out at the time. Oh, it was like kids launching into space on accident. Space Camp?
Yes.
Did you ever see Space Camp?
Yeah, I think that was sort of, when you talk about sort of science fiction sort of adventure for children in space, there's a few touchstones, and Space Camp was one that sort of came up as in a joking way.
Did it?
Amazing.
Yeah, in the
That's
room we talked
crazy.
about that because that's there is sort of that when you talk about that sort of family or storytelling, and when I say family, I use it very specifically in that it's stories that aren't just for kids or adults, but that you can do what's called a co-viewing experience where everybody can watch it together and get
Right.
something out of it. And
Like Rick and Morty.
Nope. You misunderstood.
sort of the opposite of Rick and Morty.
Got it. Okay.
But that doesn't necessarily mean just animation or just that. Like I would say there was a lot of 4-quadrant Star Trek, pun intended, storytelling happening in the 80s and 90s, for instance, of those big the blockbusters in your Spielbergs and your Camerons, your Jurassic Parks and Indiana Joneses, where there's like a spirit of adventure and fun, but also drama and stakes, and heart. And those are that's the sort of target audience we were going for with this series as well.
That's amazing. I'm so glad that you knew that. Do you know that movie, Ian?
I haven't. No, I haven't. That must have missed me. I'm clearly far too young.
There's a few things that like really influenced my love of sci-fi. And this one was on the border of terrifying me for space forever. Because when I watched it, it's like the premise is interestingly like they kind of have to fake it till they make it because they sort of launch with like an accident. They just are kids going to like a little space camp at NASA and then they accidentally launch into space and then they have to get back. And then, of course, I just thought that was possible my whole life.
If I'm not careful, I'll trip onto a shuttlecraft.
Yeah, it's a little bit like North by Northwest meets Goonies, I guess.
Amazing. That's a great description.
By way of Apollo 13.
Amazing. That's perfect.
That's such a fascinating thing too to figure out. Like when you're talking about this massive world of Star Trek, and you're thinking of a new way of approaching it, and going, it's not necessarily changing everything. It's just starting from a different perspective. That's really fun.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like we come. I think a lot of the shows that have come to this point heretofore, we just assume that it means it has to be a bunch of seasoned officers on a bridge. That they already know their jobs and they know what they're doing and they have their mission. But then you have shows like Deep Space Nine, which kind of blew that up. And at the time, it was very controversial. But now, in retrospect, it's beloved as this series that sort of acknowledges that it's a very big galaxy out there. And there's so many stories that could be told that the Federation is a part of it. But it's not necessarily just a retread of TOS or TNG or Voyager. But each one has their own flavor. And especially in this, what I've called kind of the third wave of Star Trek, post Roddenberry, post Berman, every show needs to kind of have its own character.
Yeah, it's got to have its own USP. And there's definitely seems to be this leaning of getting more into what would it really be like? Like, people aren't perfect. We all have our foibles and faults, and seeing that in shows now is far more common and far more relatable, and the more diversity, the better.
I think that's definitely true. But like what I'm noticing with revisiting Star Trek is it's like there's just such a care for it. It kind of reminds me a little bit of this getting into Star Trek. It reminds me of when I watched Lord of the Rings, with Peter's Lord of the Rings when they came out, and how much care went into them. And like you could tell the material was really meaningful. I get that same vibe from the people that we're talking with in the Star Trek realm, where the content it's like sacred text. It's like sacred stuff that you really want to do your best with. In a totally different way. It's not like you could just slap something on it and say, here's Star Trek, and it just be accepted. There's a real fan love for that. I guess that would lead me to a question, actually, Aaron, like how long have you been a fan of Star Trek?
I mean, perhaps it's cliche to say I've been a fan of it my whole life, but literally one of my earliest memories as a sentient human being is sitting on the couch with my dad And I remember seeing like the Enterprise D soaring through space, and then the saucer section separating from the secondary hull, and there was the fanfare sweeping, and it was very exciting, and I didn't know why. Yeah, and then I realized years later, because I'm a child of the '80s, that I was watching Star Trek: The Next Generation pilot live premiere way back in September in 1987.
Oh my gosh.
And my dad was a hardcore Star Trek fan, and obviously I was feeding off of his energy a little bit. But yeah, I mean, he was a big TOS fan, and he loved TNG as well. And we went to all the TNG movies together. Like that was, so some of the probably the most hardcore movies I saw when I was a little younger than I should have was Star Trek movies. Especially like Insurrection with that dude exploding and his face coming off.
His face getting really stretched. Doughty getting his face stretched off. That is dark as heck. Yeah.
You're like, Dad? Dad?
No, I walked out like I felt like I'd gotten away with something. And my dad was just like, that was a good movie.
No, solid. I like that. Man, it sounds like we were twins or something. We had such a similar introduction. So like my earliest memory similarly is with my dad, and it's the Enterprise coming on screen, sweeping in, but everything is going to shit and it blows up before the opening credits. And Cause and Effect is the first ever
Cause and Effect
memory that I had. And the same thing, going to the movies with but my dad was so bluntly honest. He'd come out of each one and say, wasn't really that good. Whereas I'm just like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. This is new Star Trek. I love it so much.
Yeah, because I didn't quite have the sort of the cinematic language yet to express what I liked and didn't like. And what I liked about it was it was just a really big, expensive episode of Star Trek. Which I was like, of course I'm gonna love it
like that. It was just it just felt like a two-parter of TNG, and I'm like, heck yes, it did. That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's what I want.
Because this it's I feel like younger Zennials, I know it's passé to make fun of Zoomers or whatever, but I feel like they're never going to understand in this age where every episode is expected to look like a feature film, what it was like of just you loving something, and then it finally gets the feature film treatment, and they get the budgets they wanted. It's such a mind-blowing experience.
It is. It's so when new fans, we're really lucky. We've got some awesome fans of the podcast that actually haven't watched any Star Trek yet and are asking how they get into it. And it's so tricky because I don't want them to be put off by the 80s-ness of some of it, but the you kind of want to give them the bedrock of it, but it's kind of just get into the new stuff and then revisit the old whenever you can.
Yeah, and that was sort of one of our mandates on Star Trek Prodigy was that was a question that I've been wrestling with for a very long time. Whenever somebody found out that I was a Star Trek fan, and they would ask me inevitably, well, where do I start? And my answer was I don't know, watch 100 episodes, and then you'll kind of absorb it by osmosis.
Yeah, exactly.
How much time do you have?
Because a lot of people will say Wrath of Khan, and I feel like that's as good a place as any, but I don't think you get quite the same out of it, not knowing the backstory of the characters and what the spoiler alert, what the death of Spock really means to Kirk. If you've only kind of, so for Prodigy in particular, we were it's not going to be perhaps the way in that people expect, but what if we did sort of take something that was skewed towards the young adult audience of people that may not have that same exposure maybe didn't have that parent who forced them to watch, Parallels over and over again, or Time Zero.
I did that to Deneé. We watched Parallels. That was one of the first episodes we watched together.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's only so many 5-year-olds out there that can get enthralled by Inner Light. I feel like
that's fair. That's fair.
So we were like, what if we kind of deconstruct Star Trek at its core? And, we realized as we were kind of talking with the room, which, half of them were really hardcore Trekkies like me. And then I'd say the other half are people that had their favorite series or their favorite movies, And so as we kind of had this dialogue, we realized oh, there's a lot of stuff that is just completely taken for granted that you only kind of figure out by osmosis or by exposure. There's not really many episodes that sit down and explain oh, the universal translator operates by reading brainwaves.
It's so true.
They just kind of
we just made
happens.
up, or not necessarily made up, but we filled in the gaps of this is why the lips don't match what they're saying, and and so on.
And there's certainly some good episodes that deal with that, like Darmok, for instance.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
That's season 5. And
they waited a long time to do that.
Yeah, and so like if you tell them like, oh, we'll watch a bunch of TNG episodes and eventually get to that, and then you'll figure out kind of how it works. But even that episode's sort of weird because it deals more with the limitations of it in terms of metaphor. So it's like a very heady kind of take on an already esoteric concept.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's so many other things like that, like the transporters and the Prime Directive, which, with the Prime Directive in particular, I would agree. I would argue that even Star Trek has been a little loose with its exact definition over the years.
They were just practically non-existent in some episodes. Just like, we don't need it this time.
Yeah, and I was actually shocked to discover that our show, Prodigy, was the first Star Trek show to ever put it on screen of like what it actually says. All the other times it was just paraphrased or kind of half referenced.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, that's
You're
amazing.
like, let me show you the scripture.
Here we go. I've got it.
Yeah, which interestingly we pulled from Beta Canon. David A. Goodman, who was a writer for Star Trek Enterprise, and he famously wrote the Futurama episode where no fan has gone before with the Star Trek characters, and he's a hardcore Star Trek fan. I've chatted with him a little bit over the years, and like he was like he's read all of the Horatio Hornblower novels that inspired Gene Roddenberry to create Star Trek.
Wow. That's some knowledge.
But we took it from his book that he had written that was the Beta Canon. It was like the history of the Federation, the first 150 years. And he had a very good definition of it. So we put that on screen.
That's amazing.
But little stuff like that had never really been sat down and explained. We're like, what if we do a whole episode about introducing those concepts to new and young audiences?
Oh, that's so smart. Because then you're also drawing in that longtime fan that like kind of craves that, but then it's also new and from a new perspective. So you kind of have the best of both worlds there.
Hey,
nice. It's like a
that was an accident. That was totally an accident.
One to part 2.
Yeah.
It wound up like, it took a little bit of time for people to realize that's what we were doing. We kind of started with very simple stuff like the universal translator. And then we got into, how away missions work and or go awry on a Star Trek. But then we started to get into like how the holodeck works, how First Contact works, and then how time anomalies work, and it just started all this stuff starts like compounding and snowballing, and we realized that just with the threads we created, we were able to create this really cool sort of vehicle just for our season and the story of our characters that tells both a self-contained story, but also enhances and embraces all of the canon that came before, and it's been a really fun kind of experiment.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a great interview. I've got to go watch the show now. So
we'll see you in
nice to meet
10 lots of 20 minutes. It really is a beginner's guide to Star Trek, but in not a preachy going to school kind of way. It's really clever the way it does it. That leads really nicely into you, no pressure, probably had and still have the most important job in like all of Star Trek at the minute, because this is the show that's aimed at the youngest audience. And if you're going to guarantee a future audience and a future growth of the franchise, a great way to do it is to aim at kids. So either you get them into Star Trek for life or you put them off for life. So how did like all of you feel with that pressure? Did you acknowledge that pressure or just think we're just going to make an entertaining show and do our best with it?
What's funny is I think everybody involved with the show was so excited about it and excited about the challenge, but also about the world. We were so passionate about it that it didn't occur to us that we would make a bad show, because we were all
perfect. That's great.
We were just like, this is going to be great.
Failure is not an option.
We get to do all the things that I always wanted to do on a Star Trek show. Yeah, I mean, there was a certain pressure, especially with the minutia to get it right. But that was less about putting off new and young audiences, and more about winning the approval of the hardcore nerds like myself.
Man, have you thought about how it's sort of like in a very direct way, like a legacy? Because how you got into Star Trek, Aaron, and you, Ian, was sitting with your parents watching this, and now you've created a show that's designed to do just that. So you're kind of like, I don't know, you're passing on this really incredible opportunity to consume something that is in this sci-fi genre that has so much more to offer, because you can start off watching something like this, and then as you get into it, there's so much more to consume, which is where I'm at now. Like I'm just swimming in Star Trek at this point. It's everywhere. I could turn and just point and we have something to consume. We have something to watch. So it's just neat. It's not lost on me that both of you had this really powerful memory of just sitting there with your parent, enjoying something, not quite understanding even the how big it is and the history of it and how important it is to television and storytelling and writers and all of that. And now you're doing the same. You're doing the same thing.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't a challenge that we took lightly. And as we were making the show, it was sort of like in our wildest dreams, like, wow, this could be one day, this could be someone 10 years from now. Is like, that was my Star Trek growing up, which is I can't even
it's
process
gonna happen.
that.
It will absolutely happen.
Just pause the show and cry.
Yeah, but every day I get like tweets and messages from fans that were like, I've tried with every other Star Trek series and I couldn't get my kids into it until this show, and this is finally the show that I can watch with my kids, or it's the show that I can watch with my grandpa and my kids together. And when I see those messages, I'm like, man, like that's my prime directive.
Yeah, it
like
is.
to just we have to indoctrinate the next generation.
That's right.
Bring them in.
That's right.
It's one of, and I don't know how I'm ever going to get to see this, but I really want to see the kids that watched Prodigy and see the hologram of Captain Janeway, this awesome role model, with no previous knowledge of Voyager. And the day that they work out that they have 7 seasons of Janeway leading the charge to watch and enjoy, that's going to be such a moment for so many kids.
I know. And what's interesting is I think I've actually seen a few messages from fans who have said, like, this is the first Star Trek that I've shared with them. And then they immediately just sort of gravitated to Kate Mulgrew's gravitas, and that's sort of both motherly, but also sort of not avuncular, whatever the aunt version of avuncular, sort of mentorship, and that kindness and that warmth, but also that strength. Like I think all of us, it's just a trick that Kate is so good at with her sort of poise and panache. That the kids sort of loved the character of Janeway, unaware, and it was only after a few episodes where they were like, they were like, who's your favorite characters? And then like, I love Janeway, and then she's like, there's a whole show with her.
Just you wait.
And then they showed episodes of Star Trek Voyager, and they sat and watched them and grabbed attention
because that
and
voice,
I'm like, it's working.
Yes, this is it. This is the gateway drug into Star Trek. That's amazing.
I feel the same way about Spock right now. Because I know who Spock is. I mean, but then like my first like understanding of Spock is in Strange New Worlds. So like my Spock is this Spock that's on this new show that's doing this whole other thing, and I know that there's so much more I can go watch now, and it's really interesting because like that's my hook for the original series is watching Spock in Strange New Worlds, and it's just such a cool thing. Like, how many franchises have the opportunity to have all these like pieces together of this lore? It's such a unique experience. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah,
I love that the kids are loving Janeway. I love Janeway because I was a TNG girl, so I would run home from school and I'd watch TNG, and then when it flipped to Voyager was right whenever I was in my rebellious teen years and didn't care about anything anymore. So like, she was great and everything, but I was kind of like over any like authority figure. And so I wasn't watching that show any longer. But it was really powerful to see a woman, at the helm. And that was a big deal. I remember feeling like that was a really big deal to see that. So,
well, it's funny because I think Voyager is going through a bit of a renaissance right now of like sort of reappreciation, because there were hardcore Voyager fans out there that kind of kept the pyre of Gondor lit. And now I think there's sort of a reassessment, which always happens. That's the cycle of Star Trek, of like the new Star Trek is not my old Star Trek, and therefore I don't like it as much. And then you come back to it.
Enterprise is finally getting its arrival now in so many ways. Like, hey, season 3 was great. Yes, it was great when it came out, you morons.
But I mean, I understand though, because whenever I see any sort of new entrance into a beloved franchise of my own, I have to kind of readjust my own expectations. And also, like, I have to take off the nostalgia filters a little bit of like, because sometimes you'll go back and watch the thing that you felt in your heart of hearts was absolutely perfect. You're like, oh, it had flaws too, but that's okay. Like, all art has flaws, and sometimes it's those very strange sort of gnarly bits that don't get sanded off or the things that make it unique or allow it to be unique. You know, if you rewatch the original Star Wars: A New Hope, the first like 45 minutes, most of what happens, just there's two droids wandering around a desert.
It's
Like,
super sandy.
the pacing is wild. And you know, but you don't remember that. You remember, oh, they're in the desert, but then Luke finds out about his destiny, and then the Death Star, and you know, and then fights Darth Vader.
It's the big stuff you remember.
Yeah, and you also remember it in the context of the trilogy, which also is incredible, but also has its own issues, you know?
But lightsabers, yay!
That's the thing, is like, you remember that, and I feel like Star Trek is the same way. Like, I don't think anybody on the planet would disagree with me that there are a number of even original series episodes that aren't great, but you don't, that doesn't necessarily denigrate the rest of the series. You know, it just means that you look at it more holistically. And, you know, I think anytime a new Star Trek comes along, there's that a little bit of like, this isn't familiar. Is this what I want? Do I like this? And then after, you know, a few episodes, you start to get on the wavelength of what they're going for, and then before you know it, you're like, wow, I love these characters. What happened? I can't wait for the next season.
I feel like I've always known them.
Yeah, the storytelling changes too, because the things that like TOS would do or TNG would do, like the way that stories were told when these episodes were being filmed or when they were being written, stories were told differently. Like you said, the pacing was different, or the way that they would present, you know, a circumstance between two people would be very different in 70s than it would be in 2020. So I think that's another really interesting thing when you go back and watch the things that kind of stand out. It's like, oh, we wouldn't have that conversation the same way at all now. That's actually kind of like inappropriate in 2020 version, but it's still an important thing to look back on and go, but look how far storytelling has come, or look how far we've come in how we're talking about things. And that's just part of content creation. And Star Trek is a huge content creation machine, which of course Ian and I and yourself can appreciate because we just create content all the time. Like, we're writing scripts. So, you know, we write sometimes as a team, we write 5 scripts sometimes a week on our team to go into production. So, and those are for short, you know, videos that maybe are, you know, 18 minutes long or so, but it's still just this churning of creating and ideas and how we're going to like piece these things together. And then with storytelling aspect of it, man, it's, to me, that's the fascinating part. And again, it's something I talk about almost every time we do one of these episodes. The quality and the care of it is something that I think you can just tell. You can tell when you go into a restaurant and you know that they're caring. You can tell when you go into places and the people that are producing, or they're making it a welcome space for people to enjoy. You can tell when they care. And that's been really fun to experience, honestly, because, you know, my time is precious. Everyone's time is precious. So it's nice to know that what you're watching is something that people have spent a lot of time thinking about.
And I think with any sort of art creation, it's important that nobody sets out to make a bad thing. I don't think
nobody wants to make a bad movie. Yeah.
Like, even if they want it to be campy, they want it to be a good campy film.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
And so, like, I feel like all art is a miracle, and to a certain degree. And so I realize the irony of me saying this on the CinemaSins podcast.
No,
but that's
you're not
that's
wrong,
the whole
though.
point. Yeah.
It's interesting because CinemaSins is like, everyone loves like movies and television. We genuinely love it. The idea is, well, what if we just did something like we pretended like we hate it and we've watched it too many times?
Yeah. Well, that was my introduction to world building as a kid. Is I would literally sit on the playground, and all I would do all day with my friends is like, we would just like hang out on the jungle gym and say, so, you know, what if the Terminator fought the Predator? Who would win? You know, would Lord of the Rings be the same? You know, if a giant sandworm from Arrakis showed up, like that's all we would talk about.
So good.
and we would just like deconstruct the
Yeah.
stories you like, what didn't work about them, what did,
Gosh, that's so interesting because that plays into how you're creating Prodigy too. Because you took this Star Trek and you deconstructed it and then you recreated it into this new thing that's just getting such positive feedback. It's got to feel awesome.
And I think when it comes to any sort of creative storytelling, it's always helpful to kind of, I think it's a little bit of a misnomer to think that you can create something that is truly wholly original.
No,
because everything is standing on the shoulders of giants. Whether you like it or not, you are influenced by or informed by or reacting to this massive swaying tower of culture. And your conversation with that is what can generate something new to the dialogue. But you have to just kind of go into it with the expectation that inevitably you're going to be compared to other things, and also the thing that you're creating owes a lot to those other things, even if you're actively trying to subvert them or undercut them or deconstruct them or whatever. And in our case, we loved the thing that we were doing, and so we just kind of broke it down to constituent parts and put it in a remix, and then realized like, oh, that's just how they made all Star Trek. They just took a weird idea and said, what if this happened?
Yeah.
That crossover story, it accidentally like segues really nicely into probably my favorite, and it's the Kobayashi Maru episode, which must be your most asked about episode. Just that briefly for Deneé, the main character stumbles into the holodeck and ends up in an updated version of the Kobayashi Maru hologram program, which is a training exercise about a no-win scenario where no matter what you do, you lose. And it's supposed to teach cadets that this is something you have to handle as a captain. You may not be able to win. But on this version, you can pick your own crew. So we have Uhura at the con, we have Spock as the second officer, we have Scotty as the chief engineer. Who else do we have on the bridge?
Well, he had Odo as a security officer.
I loved Odo.
And it's amazing. But the
Beverly Crusher as medical officer.
Okay, I'm there. This is awesome.
The beautiful thing about this episode is that instead of getting new voice actors to come in and voice the parts, audio was pulled from previous episodes and spliced into the episode. So it was the original actors talking, and that was goosebumps to hear Leonard Nimoy talking on the bridge of the Enterprise D and interacting with it. How did you pull that off? Because that was tricky to make it sound organic. And was it a deliberate choice to obviously use the original audio instead of getting new actors in? Like, what an episode to pull off.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and I do get asked about it a lot because I wrote that episode and produced it, but people do seem to really react to it, and it's pretty overwhelmingly positive. And it was a labor of love, and when I say labor, I mean it. It was very hard to make.
Yeah, I bet.
Because people tend to think, oh, surely Star Trek just has a big database and you just type in the words that you want and it'll pop up all it does not exist. I had to do reverse Boolean searches in Google, I wound up rewatching about 30 or 40 Star Trek episodes top to bottom and reading scripts for about 80 or 90.
Oh my gosh.
And then sometimes you'd find what you think is the perfect line, and then you'd track it down in the time code of the episode, and then it wouldn't work because those old 1960s mics were just little boom guy was just trying to pick it up as he went, and it was on magnetic tape. Or they just said it weird, or they were picking up a glass as they were saying it, or there's background noise
or just wasn't in the
even on the isolated track. So it was a lot of trial and error and sort of massaging and tweaking. And I wish I had more time, but I think everybody understood the spirit of what I was trying to do. It came. And you're absolutely right in that. We briefly discussed do we recast people? But then we realized that's not really the point of this, and also on top of that, we realized, a number of the lines that we wanted Spock to say were things that he had already said, that were kind of like encapsulating elements of his philosophy and his mentorship to Kirk and others over the years. and we were like, well, maybe we could at least preserve Leonard Nimoy. And then as we kind of dug deeper, we realized, we could do that with everybody. And we intended to bring as many of the voice actors back. And I had written roles for Nichelle Nichols and for Renee Aubergenois, but unfortunately Renee passed away, and Nichelle, I didn't realize how unwell she was. So at that point, we kind of made a choice. Like, well, I put them in because I loved their characters, and I think they were.
Yeah.
I really wanted to honor them. I'm not going to just recast them because of this or that. So I doubled down, and it wound up being like months more work. But I managed to find all the lines that I needed to put together sort of a narrative. And something else I found interesting that with the Kobayashi Maru scenario specifically is that it kind of all Star Trek scenes of that nature kind of follow the same rhythm of like, we've detected a thing. Like, let's do a multi-spectral sensor sweep. Oh, we've detected something strange. Enemies have decloaked.
Shields
We're
up.
under fire.
Damage report.
Shields up.
Yeah.
Damage. So like I felt like I was losing my mind after watching something where I was like, I see the Star Trek scene.
Yep.
I can see the code behind the Matrix.
I know too much. I need the red pill.
But it was a really interesting experiment, and the fact that it came out even as well as it did, I'm thankful to our production team and our directors, because it required a lot more effort than even most of the other episodes because of it. There was so much trial and error and revisions and stuff. But I kind of became the producer and quasi directed some of it just to try to get it to work. And the response has been really overwhelming to that episode as well. Both because I love holodeck episodes and because I love Star Trek. I was like, I have to get this right.
It's gotta be done. So I knew the show was special. I knew it was doing something different, and I was enjoying it. But it was that episode where I thought, oh, this is really, really special. Like, there is a level of care, and we don't have to do anything like that on the same scale, but there is a lot of searching that we have to do and a lot of sifting through things. So I just had a little fraction of an appreciation for what it must have taken to pull that off. And after that episode, absolutely sold. And I was like, well, these guys, they care. They definitely care.
Yeah. Well, that was also by design and intent, because we didn't want to, as I kind of alluded to before, we didn't want to start with throwing kids into the deep end or new audiences into the deep end of like, okay, you're on a bridge and you just have to know what this stuff means. Yeah. And they're all doing their parts. So we kind of kept a lot of the really hardcore Star Trek-iness at sort of arm's length for the first couple episodes, so you get to know the characters on their own terms and their gradual introduction to these ideas. So we knew up front the first 4 or 5 episodes would be a little bit light, with the exception of stuff that we can sprinkle in.
The glory shots of
like,
the protostar.
Yeah,
that'll do it.
And downed Klingon bird of praise, and Lurian miners, and just be like, don't worry, guys, it's coming.
It's okay.
We'll get to you brainiacs in a minute.
Yeah, and then once we kind of got past that first sort of mini arc of those first 5 episodes, where the crew is together and their mission was sort of set, we were like, all right, this is the episode where we can go a little more hog wild. And all eyes just kind of turned to me.
Yep. Get the fishing rod out. You're going on a hunt.
Yeah, and it was and we went a little bit more than I think we normally would, in terms of for lack of a better term, fan service, but also just injecting pure Star Trek past and present.
That's
quite
fun.
literally injecting it into the episode.
Yes, but it was this really fun experience to just
that's so cool.
Basically just say, hey, all these shows that supposedly exist in the same universe, I can finally just put it all in one episode.
That's incredible. That's got to hold the record for the most crossover of different things. Yeah, because you've got obviously Voyager, Deep Space Nine, the original series.
Until you do it again.
Yeah, until you do it again. Get somebody in from Enterprise.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing is, I originally had gone even more overboard, and I think I'd written 12 crew members on the bridge.
But then you realize you needed to sleep.
Yeah. Well, also, there's just a physical limit of how many characters you can design and animate.
Yeah, no, that's
and
fair.
they're like, we
Yeah.
can't do it. You have to pare it down to like
Pick your
5 or
6
6.
favorite. No, don't make me choose.
At one point, I had Data in there. At one point, I had Worf in there. At one point, I had Trip from Enterprise in there.
Amazing.
And I know, but it's.
But what you
But
ended
can
up
do it-
with
you
was
can do it again
incredible.
later.
Yeah.
You can do it again later. There's always, you can do more of that. I did have a question about the character like creation and stuff. Like when you we're kind of creating this, you sit down and you have this idea and this vision, and then there's like an artist team that sort of begins to put together character builds. Did you have a character in mind from the very beginning and you saw them and you just described it? Or was an art team sort of responsible for like bringing some of these people and alien creatures and things to life for you guys?
And Murphs.
Murphs.
And Murph. Murph was by far the hardest character to design of all of them, which you think,
Which is ironic.
I was like, oh, he's just a cute little slug. But it's actually deceptively hard to create a cute slug.
Yes. And
we went so through.
I can't remember if they even have a gender.
Murph is a he.
Yes.
Yeah. Zero is non-binary.
Yes.
But yes, it was an incredible challenge. We went through so many iterations of Murph before we settled on one, because we originally thinking oh, he's just like a sea slug. There's a species of sea slug that have sort of cool frills on them. So we sent them some of those. And then they were like, this is too crazy. We had to peel it back.
Simmer down.
It's very much a collaboration. We kind of can have a vision just to kind of give them a target to hit.
Right.
But inevitably, as they kind of do ideation and sort of art exploration, they'll come up with stuff that even we didn't think about.
Or they'll say, so fun.
Or they'll say hey, instead of the nacelles doing this, or what if they did this? And it's so much cooler than what we originally thought. We're like, all right, let's lean into that.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
Is that the reason you want to get a 3D printer, Ian? Is so that you can 3D print everything?
I mean, if Eagle Moss aren't going to be around in their current form, I've got to get me a Protostar somehow. But yeah, that ship design is gorgeous.
Yeah, that's got to be so fun. I don't know. There's just this we've talked about this a little bit before. There's just this fascinating part as a story creator myself, where it's like to create something and then a team begins to bring it to life and add things, and you're just like, yes, whoa, not that, but close, and just
that's
this
way better than I thought it was going to be. Well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to sit in that room with all these people that are just collectively putting something together that's just fastly coming to life. You're just on this trajectory and you're going this way, and that's gotta feel pretty crazy.
It is a really fun experience to, just like that weird half-baked idea I had in the back of my head is now a fully living and breathing, moving around character. It's wild. I also worked with the Hageman brothers on a show called Tales of Arcadia for Netflix from Guillermo del Toro and DreamWorks Animation. And Guillermo used to have days where he would literally just bring in an army of his artists that he would work in, and we would just take 3 days off, and everybody would just draw based on some of the random ideas that we had thrown out.
If anyone needs a team of drawers to tap into their brain, it's Guillermo del Toro. Definitely. I need this entourage with me because my brain is producing some stuff that I need on paper.
Well, he's quite a good artist even unto himself, but he has such a defined style now that he's able to just say, make it like this or make it like that, and it just kind of it's like watching cathedrals assemble in midair. It's incredible.
That's awesome.
That's amazing. Watching cathedrals assemble in air, and then if he's listening, hi, thanks for listening to the podcast.
I'm sure
that
he's listening.
Is you. That's what a way to be described.
Yeah, exactly.
I want someone to describe me that way someday. Holy crap.
From now on, I will. I
Anyway.
promise.
Oh, thank you. Can that be my introduction next episode?
Yes, it can, I promise. Constructed out of cathedral rocks. I know, I'll just make you sound old by accident, sorry.
Yeah, you will. I'm an ancient woman.
We saw an awesome picture on Twitter of the writer's room having a pizza party. So that leads really nicely into what's that, right? Is it a actual writer's room now? how collaborative is it? Because we had the pleasure of talking to Fred Bronson, who wrote on some Star Trek TNG episodes, and back then it's much more, you pitch a script, you write it, and then somewhere down the line it happens. But this feels way more like a collaborative team that's putting together this show. So what's that writer's room like?
Yeah, we had a proper writer's room, where all of us were there every day. For season 1, we were there every day in person.
That's
because
amazing.
believe it or not, it takes that long to make these episodes. This was pre-pandemic. It was it's around, I think, 2019. For like 8 months, we just kind of came in every day.
That's way earlier than I thought it was. Wow.
And then just wrote and I ideated and thought about stuff and had sidebar conversations and riffed. And, both myself and the Hagemans very much have a sort of a democratic approach where, when you're running a writer's room, we tend to say like, anybody can pitch anything and I'm just going to be the referee. And obviously you guide that a little bit by providing feedback of like, I like that, but that doesn't quite answer this question or this, but beyond that, if you have you want to bring up a thing that might throw a wrench in the works, I would rather hear those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
There might be a nugget there that we can work on.
Yeah, and then be like, oh, you have an issue because of this. Well, what if we did this?
Right.
And then it becomes this way more interesting, gnarly idea that has all those weird bits on it that make Star Trek amazing. When they keep you up at night, being like, wait, so if Data's head was in a cave for 500 years,
Yes! How did that work? Amazing.
That's incredible. I love that collaborative process. I kind of imagine it'd be like someone says like, okay, what if we did an episode about seat belts? And then like someone's like, okay, and what if we, you know what I mean? It just sort of
rein
just
it in. Yeah, exactly.
like, no, but maybe, just these, and then it just kind of becomes this other thing. We do collaborative writing every once in a while also, and it takes longer, but our work is better because it's not just, 5 lines written by Deneé. It's 5 lines that started off as an idea of mine that turned into everyone adding something that's now something that it could have never been without all of us talking about it at the same time. And it does take a director, and does take someone kind of leading that conversation and then choosing when to land. Like, okay, this is good. We're going to move on. And you kind of, I just think that would be such a cool thing. I would love to be on a fly on a wall on that. Actually, I would just love to be doing anything. I would bring coffee or whatever. Just
inspiration.
It reminds me of so when we were talking with Fred, he was talking about like back in the day, he'd be like hanging out and be like, hey, hey Gene, what's up? Just on this,
to have
like,
access
what a world
Gene
to be in.
Pitch an idea to him. Like, just had this idea about a candle. And
just this idea that I had once.
Well, it's like the the great Vulcan philosopher Sirach would say, "May we together be greater than the sum of both of us." It very much is sort of, as you were saying, like any one of us could come up with something at 2 a.m. staring at a blank screen, but I don't know if it would ever be as good as something that when you have 5 or 6 brilliant minds all kind of piggybacking and yes-anding each other, you can come up with something very, very interesting very quickly. And that's like, chicken feed for my brain. Like I go fireworks go off when I start hearing, all these different ideas coming from every side. And I love that. That's like my happy place, is being in a room with a bunch of smart people, just kind of deep diving into the weirdest crap you can imagine.
Did you know
it's going to be so fun.
Season 3, episode 4, this happened. I was like, whoa, yeah, let's do that. Let's go.
Is it wrong to ask the opposite side of that and ask like, what is one of the hardest parts of what you have to do? Like, if that's something that just fires you and gets you so excited and like propels you forward, is there a part of the creative process that you just sort of dread? Because there are definitely parts of that we all have, I think, in our lives. It's like, I do this so well and it just comes so easily, but this I suffer.
Yeah, well, I mean, the ironic thing is but the thing I like the least is being a Dr. No. I hate being the person who just says, you can't do that because of canon. I don't like doing it. I'm very good at it, but I don't like to do it. But what's kind of nice about the rich 55 plus years of canon that we can draw from is that it's deeply contradictory.
It's like, you can get away with this because Star Trek got away with it in
That's the thing.
1994.
You just have to justify it within the sandbox that you're playing in.
Yeah.
So, and if years of Dungeons and Dragons has taught me anything, is that rules lawyering is an important skill to have in any creative endeavor.
Without killing all of the fun.
There are some things that we just should let be what they are because it's just foundational.
Sure.
But we can play a little bit over here and have some fun.
No,
and kind of redirect the creativity.
Well, I can't remember who said it, but there's this sort of writing rule, I guess, or suggestion that you can, any great story can have one coincidence in it. You can get away with one coincidence, and that's what you need to just sort of be the inciting incident of the story. And it's only when you have too many things that are convenient, then nothing is.
Exactly. You can't have the hurricane, the meteor strike, the alien invasion, and this other huge pandemic happening all at once in one story, because it's
unless that's the premise of the episode.
Okay,
exactly.
I was just
the
thinking that.
We're in a holodeck where it just keeps generating every single apocalyptic event.
That's exactly right.
That's a fun episode.
That is.
Feel free to submit that to the Berman Writers Room. I look forward to seeing that.
How do we submit to the writing room, by the way? Is there's like a .org.com situation?
Well, that's the one unfortunate sort of side effect, I suppose, of writing so many shows that tend to be slightly more serialized in this golden age of television, is that it's a lot harder to do freelance scripts because you can't just sort of jump in and pitch ideas. The way that when the very intensely episodic stuff out of the Berman era, where they did have that PO box or that phone number you could just call and say, "Hey, I got a pitch," and they'd be like, "Send it over."
I have this idea about two aliens that fall in love. Let me describe it to you in detail.
50 times this week. Please stop.
Yeah,
but
I know a lot of people I know so many people that that was kind of their first gig, and now they're giants, in the television field. Because they got an opportunity like that, and if I had my druthers, I would love to eventually implement something like that, even if it had to be like a window. But I think what's kind of replaced that is when a new show pops up, through the grapevine, people kind of find out I can submit my script to this network and maybe they'll pass it along. And then you get this big pile of scripts that you can just I don't know who this person is, but I want to see if they're a good writer and they spark my interest. So that's kind of the process as it is now. But, I do wish that we could return to those days where there was just like
an open casting call or something.
Imagine the ideas that are out there that it's hard to get hold of them because of the sheer volume. But there's some crazy stuff that hasn't even been imagined yet.
I feel that pain. That's a question we get too, is like, how could I write for you guys? And it's like, oh my gosh, if we opened up the floodgates, managing all of that content to read through and find those brilliant minds is so tricky. And there's not necessarily the best way to do it.
But I do feel like talent will out. And if you keep at it and you write a truly killer script, people will take notice, and you'll know you have that script because people keep telling you that and passing it along to people, and then it'll start opening doors for you. So, if you're in that position where you want to start writing for television seriously, just keep writing, and submitting it wherever you can, and, find representation or somebody that believes in you. And, it's a marathon, not a race. It took me about 7 years of full time trying to write before I was able to do it and make a living doing it.
Amazing. What an amazing thing to remind everybody of. And I think Fred said a very similar thing, how many scripts he wrote that never saw the light of day.
Yeah, he had two that made it to actual episodes, and he was like, that was out of 40 that we pitched. It's unreal.
Yeah. Then there's always that you just have to know what you're passionate about. And if it won't leave your mind and you feel like it's something that you're meant to do, don't be discouraged that you're in a sea of other people. Just keep going with what you can do. And look at, that's incredible for 7 years just to passionately pursue something that you enjoy. And then to have the ability to, work with this other passionate people. It's not something that everyone has a chance, to experience, but it's really neat that you get to represent the creation of something that so many people are enjoying. It's got to feel so good.
Yeah, and selfishly, I want people to keep trying and make new shows because I want cool new shows to watch.
Absolutely.
I can't just make it all myself. Like, I want you guys to make awesome shows.
It's like a chef that's like, I know I make good food. Can someone make some for me too?
I don't want to have to cook
Yeah.
everything and watch it all, eat it all myself. That's amazing.
Do you want to do the game now, Ian?
Yeah, we can do. We have like a quick fire.
Yeah.
Oh my
no,
gosh.
Okay, I did this earlier. And I think I did pretty good.
I have got, before we
Okay.
do that, I've got one final question from one of our listeners who
Sure.
is 9-year-old Amelia, who would absolutely
Wow.
love to know if now I think their Acacian, the cat that appears in the very last
Mhm.
episode, will they be a permanent crew member and will they be returning?
Oh, what if that's a spoiler? Oh no.
Yeah, I how do I explain non-disclosure agreements to
To a
a 9-year-old?
9-year-old.
No, you just have to break their heart, that's all.
Ian Whittington.
Very clearly, her adventure is not over. You saw her go
Mhm.
off in with that mining crew, and I suspect that her story will continue in some way.
That is a
I'll put it that
beautiful answer.
And maybe, what's her name?
Amelia.
Amelia.
The name of the cat? I don't actually.
No, the
Oh,
name of
we
the
didn't-
child.
Well, name of the child
we
is
did not
Amelia.
name we did not name the Cation child in the show. It was
okay.
just referred to as the Cation child.
My idea was, Amelia, maybe you can write the next adventure yourself.
There we
That's
go.
I mean that's a great way to start. And yeah, who knows? Maybe you'll sell a spin-off show and I'll be
Yes!
coming to you for a job.
That's right.
Amazing.
That's
Amelia
right.
the Cation cat and her mining consortium. It's amazing.
Okay, now the game. Now the game.
Deneé is so eager for the game. Okay, so this is a quick fire round, and you're gonna have two options, and it's just gut instinct. What would you pick? Just
Okay.
whatever comes from the heart.
I think I'm ready.
Okay, are we ready? Okay, Spock or Tuvok?
Spock.
Enterprise A or Enterprise D?
D.
Crusher or Pulaski?
Crusher.
Yeah, I have that reaction to all of these questions when I wrote them. Klingons or Borg?
Klingons.
Janeway or Picard?
Do I have to
This is
respond to that?
mean. Yes.
Um,
I'm sure Kate Mogra is listening.
I grew up with Picard, so that was my captain growing up. But I have newfound appreciation for Janeway, and she embodies all of them.
Not an answer.
Childhood Aaron, it was Picard.
Okay, good enough.
Bravo. I like it.
Holodeck or Ricer?
Holodeck or holodeck? Oh my god.
Mm-hmm. Rock Tack or Murph?
Whew.
Making you choose between the kids.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna go with Rock Chalk just because she is a sweet cinnamon bun and must be protected at all costs.
She absolutely is. Deneé, I know Deneé will react to her the most of everyone.
It's okay, I haven't seen it, but I chose Murph just because I like the word.
Yeah, Murph.
And then I went and looked at the picture. I was like, I think I chose right.
Gach or Romulan Ale?
Gach.
Okay. Beta Quadrant or Gamma Quadrant?
Gamma.
Risky but true. Risky but good
Yeah.
choice.
Well, there's just so much more that you can explore there. It's just
Well,
been
there's so much about the Beta Quadrant we don't know yet.
Well,
as
that's
well.
true. But I feel like the Romulans are there, the Klingons are there.
It's
like,
risky.
That cat.
Yeah.
The cat could be
Cat's
there.
there.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a Deep Space Nine nut. I love the
Yeah, it's going to be Gamma Quadrant. Morn or Quark?
Ooh, Quark.
Mm-hmm.
Warren's great, but but he's an
Yeah,
enigma.
come on. One's the best. And will the Protostar make it back to the Alpha Quadrant, and will we find out what happened to Captain Chakotay?
I mean, we shall see, shall we?
Oh,
You're
I
so
didn't quite have the
sneaky.
flow. I felt like if we got to
Wait.
flow through all of them, I could have tricked you into an answer.
You didn't ask me that one. Okay.
Would you have been able to give me an
Sneaky.
answer?
I mean, I would pretend to know the answer for sure.
What is your answer, Deneé?
Stay tuned.
Dang it.
That's a good answer. I use that one on Twitter a lot.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
stay tuned. That's amazing.
We matched almost every single answer, Aaron.
Wow.
I think that says something.
Mm-hmm.
I
Feeling
don't
pretty
know what
good.
it says, but it absolutely says something.
Probably something really, really cool. Like meaningful, deep.
Yeah, it's like the Zodiac.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
You're a Scorpio Taurus Aries too. I can
Yeah.
tell.
I think the final question I have, and you've been so kind with your time and spending good time chatting with us. We obviously know that there's, I'm sure you get asked this a lot. We know there's a Lower Decks crossover live action thing coming with Strange New Worlds. Prodigy is kind of well poised to be in the timeline with Picard and etc. Do we have any hope of like a crossover with that as well?
Here's what I'll say.
You can say.
I Star Trek has a long history of characters, legacy characters, and crossover characters, especially in around the middle of the Berman era, where you had Picard and Voyager at Deep Space Nine at different times. Spock show up on the Enterprise D. It is a long and storied history and tradition in Star Trek, and I think we will be deeply remiss if you do not see some familiar faces on our show.
Okay, I like it. It was well poised, almost as if it was being read.
Such a butt.
I'm such a butt. I had to do it.
Oh, Aaron, it was so nice to hang out with you. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
How can people find you? I took your job, Captain.
You did. You took over, Ambassador. Get off my ship.
Oh, sorry.
Where do you want to direct people to? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on various social media, Twitter, Instagram, at Good Aaron. That's GOODAARON, because my last name's too hard to spell.
I feel your pain.
And I usually tweet about all kinds of stuff, a lot of Star Trek, any new updates on the projects or fun fan art, I'll certainly quote tweet or retweet. And if you want to follow the Star Trek Writers Room directly, which I have a hand in as the head writer, you can follow them at Trek Prodigy Room, and it's got a blue check mark and everything.
It's a great follow. I recommend. You get loads of like little nuggets come out of there, and just looks like a joyful place.
Yeah, and so any new stuff coming down the pipeline, follow me or them, and you'll see it there. So that's how best to keep in touch. And obviously, check out Star Trek Prodigy on Nickelodeon and Paramount Plus, or if it's international, I believe it's in a bunch of other places too. So, as they used to say in the '90s, check your local listings.
Yes. Which is something us poor Brits have to do so often now. But yeah, it is now on Paramount Plus. Hopefully that's where it's going to stay as well. But yeah, high recommend. It's not a massive investment of time either. It's good stuff. Long may it continue.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and
Thanks,
live
Aaron.
long and prosper.
Well, as we say on the podcast, live long and Podsper.
Peace and pod life.
Peace and pod life? Yeah, I'll take it.
Isn't that the response, the call and response?
It is.
I think it's supposed to be. I need to do that. That's what I should do.
You should have done that from the beginning. We're 4 seasons in and you haven't thought of that. You're fired.
I'm still new. I'm sorry.
Aaron, we have a vacancy on the podcast now, I'm afraid. You are welcome to fill it.
Oh, wow. Well, thanks for having me.
It was nice to hang out with you. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. How amazing was that? And this time I deliberately beamed him out. That was meant to happen.
He's safe. He's safe.
He's safe. He's in my quarters. Nope, he's in my quarters. I have locked him in there. Ooh. And this is where we will be writing the next series of Prodigy together.
You've kidnapped Aaron.
I've kidnapped Aaron until he lets me write on the show.
Yeah, I'm sure that's actually how you're supposed to do it. If you can't just wait for 7 years to be noticed.
I know, I don't want to work hard for it.
You just kidnapped somebody.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah. That's how it works. We'll just get one of those like little mind machines, like just a memory wiper kind of a situation. We'll sci-fi it up. We'll make it make sense to Aaron. Then we'll release him. Yeah, it's going to be fine.
We'll release that as an episode? The mind wiper? Amazing.
Oh my God. What if Aaron decided that he had, let's hope he had the best time, right?
Hope so.
Okay, he listens to the episode and he's like, wait, was I kidnapped?
It wouldn't. Whoa, what a mind fudge that would be.
I know. Like you may have just screwed your chances of ever writing for Star Trek. I'm just saying, we got to be careful.
Yeah, I should be really careful about writing the Sins videos as well.
Oh my God. Okay, quick question before we wrap up today. Can we watch episodes of Prodigy though? Because whether we do it for the show or not, I really want to watch this show super bad. I love animated stuff anyway, and I was thinking Iris isn't old enough maybe just yet, but I don't care. I'm going to watch it myself.
Heck yeah, I watched it on my own. It's like, it is a great balance of appealing to the old fans and getting in with the new. And if that interview didn't convince you to go and watch Star Trek Prodigy, absolutely nothing will. The passion that Aaron has for it and the care that the entire writers' room seems to have put into it is incredible, and I cannot wait for season 2. I think the next thing we're going to do is Lower Decks, but in between the lull between Lower Decks and the next thing, we can definitely do Prodigy.
Yeah, I'm not going to sing one of his episodes. No, I'm not doing that. I mean, maybe he would actually appreciate it. Who knows?
Oh, I mean, nothing is without sin, but yeah, I think he would appreciate the critique.
We just sin another show. Like we watch Prodigy and then we sin another show. So every sin doesn't actually make any sense. And at the end, we reveal that like there was no sins.
Yeah, there are no sins. This is just a zero. That's amazing. Hey, Zero, that's one of the characters.
Oh,
amazing.
Hey.
Well, that's all from us this week, guys. Thank you for listening along, and go and show Aaron some love and the writers' room for Prodigy as well. And that's all. As always, live long and Podsper.
Oh, and then I'm supposed to say that thing. Something pod.
And
something.
It's so
pod
the actual,
peace and pod.
The actual
peace,
response.
The peace pod be with you. And you as well.
The actual response is peace and long life. So pod and long life.
Pod and long life.
Amazing. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Want to connect with the show? Our hailing frequencies are always open through captainspod@cinemasins.com. Like, comment, and subscribe on your podcast player of choice, and be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
Do you know anything about patella repair by chance, Captain? Are you recording? What? I'm just baffled that you were like, yeah, you should be recording. And then you yourself are not recording at all. Oh, the fact that you don't know what a patella is means you don't know how to do patella repairs.
Yeah,
that's
what
fine.
Is a patella? Is it
your kneecap?
Oh, right. Okay. I thought it was the thing that propels the boat forward.
That's a propeller.
Oh, I thought it was the thing that you hold on to that adjusts the steering thing on the back of a boat.
That's
rudder? A tiller.
Oh, it's a tiller.
Yeah, I mean, you can get charged per tiller.
That's true. Right. If you were to purchase
multiple tillers,
you would be charged per
and then
tiller.
You'd need to organise one repair per tiller. Dicer is in the building.
When you crack yourself up, that's the good stuff. So, can I tell you something? Okay. Iris is starting school in like a week and a half.
Yikes.
Her very first time to ever attend school. So we're along for the ride, along for the journey, and she's going to a private school where every child, there's 18 total, 18 children for two teachers, and there are 3, 4, and 5-year-old. 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, and so she'll have like a variety of kids to be in her class, and she'll be able to teach the young ones and learn. Yeah, so she's going to be kind of at the top of the class as far as, intellect and experience, but at the same time, she's never been to school before, so this is all going to be new for her. So, but each child brings a plant, and they keep that plant alive through the year.
Oh, hopefully.
And so today we went to go pick out her plant, and so we walk into this little greenhouse kind of place, and we're going in, and I say, we're going to pick out a plant, and she says, I said, but they also have flowers here, so we can't get a flower unless the flower is in soil. And she says, well, but a plant is a flower, or a flower is a plant. And I agreed with her. She said, what's the difference? And I said, well, we need to have a plant that's got roots, so that way you can water it and keep it alive.
I mean, cactus is a no-brainer. That would have been a great, okay.
Oh, yes, that's a great thing for children to just have in a classroom if they're ready to be grabbed.
Nobody's fucking with the kid that brings a cactus to school.
Hey, Captain, I'm going to be going to Podcast Movement.
Heck yeah.
Do you think I should try to recruit other members to our crew?
Yeah, do it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as they like Star Trek and stuff.
What if I showed up to a podcast convention as if I was accidentally at a Star Trek convention? And I just did
No accident, just own it.
I acted completely normal the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Ferengi the first day.
Oh, you're going like full alien cosmetics and stuff.
100%. Yeah.
Amazing.
And then I'll go Vulcan on day 2.
That fits.
Borg, day 3.
Very businesslike. No! Is it day 3 like that? I'm not fucking around day. That's like, I'm taking no prisoners.
So like day 1 and 2 is like the conversations and like people are like having a good time with me as a Vulcan. And then I'm like, yeah, you know what? Why don't I just talk tomorrow? And I'll schedule all of the appointments for recruitment at the same time. And they walk in, the room is dark.
Oh, no.
One
and then just
spotlight
the
comes
red
on.
Light?
And it's,
I think of the Borg red light.
Yeah. The red light. And they're like, what is this? The light comes on. Borg Queen, right?
Oh, nice.
Doors are already closed and locked. They're fucked.
Yeah. Seems not right, but okay.
And then I just hand out like little Borg cubes and say, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
Futile.
Resistance is futile.
Eventually, Iris would like Prodigy, I think. It's probably a bit scary at the minute, but she'll like it.
Considering that she thinks Fraggle Rock is frightening.
Down Fraggle Rock. No, Fraggle Rock is frightening.
It's
freaking scary. It's dark as heck.
I didn't realize how scary it was until I was watching it with her and I was like, oh no.
Oh no. No. This isn't right.
It's got some darkness.
Worries for another day. Let the music play. Down a Fraggle Rock.
Do 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 do.
Dun, da, 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 da.
Do 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 do
I've got a quick fire round to finish with this time. So he's going to have, I think it's 10 questions where it's like an option and he has to just immediately, first thought, which would you prefer? Should I try that on you first?
Yeah, what try it out on me.
Okay, so tell me which one you'd prefer, just gut instinct. Spock or Tuvok?
Spock.
Enterprise A or Enterprise D?
I like D. Is this going well? Am I doing this right?
You won't know the next one. Klingons or Borg?
What do you mean I wouldn't know that one? I of course know that one.
I skipped the one you wouldn't know.
Oh, I want to know that one.
Okay, Crusher or Pulaski?
Crusher.
Klingons or Borg?
Klingons.
Janeway or Picard?
Picard.
Holodeck or Ricer?
Holodeck.
Rock, Tack or Murph?
I kind of like Murph.
You would love Murph.
I don't know what that means.
Murph is on Prodigy. Google Murph right now. Prodigy.
Okay. Okay.
That is your spirit animal.
Oh,
look at He's so fucking cute.
It's got like a weird. It's kind of hitting me in a strange way. Like,
okay.
That's a big maw, right? Like that's just like it's just open and there's nothing going on. It's just an openness.
I'm so happy though.
Yeah, he's pretty cute.
Okay, Gach or Romulan ale? Gach. You would not like that. Beta quadrant or gamma quadrant?
Gamma.
Ooh, risky.
I don't know anything that's happening.
Risky. Morn or Quark?
I think I'm going to say Quark.
Okay, yeah, I think so. The crowd is screaming Morn right now, but that's okay. And then the last one, it isn't an option, but it's like, I'll wait until the end. You'll be surprised. I'm going to try and trick him into giving something away.
Oh,
so the last one is, will this person come back in the next season?
Oh my God.
While we're on a row, just get like
what
a
if he just decides
reaction.
never to come back?
I just need the one secret, that's all.
That's just the one secret. Okay. I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I bought glitter, like a lot of glitter.
Why did you do that?
Well, it just seemed like a really exciting thing. It's pretty. Iris and I were at the craft store. We couldn't resist ourselves. No one was telling me no. That's
glitter is bullshit.
Glitter is dangerous.
Bullshit.
Well, so I thought this was cool because it had this variety pack of like all the colors of the rainbow style, right?
I'm gonna vomit. Yeah.
Why?
Because it gets fucking everywhere. It's just a mess. Working at Toys R Us, I just would come home with glitter in me just all the time.
Just leaking glitter?
Yeah, I couldn't have a beard because it always looked bedazzled.
Well, my mistake here is that I purchased a variety pack of 12 different colors of glitter. And I thought that I was getting a deal because it wasn't as expensive as the other options.
Right.
But now I realize that the other options were in resealable containers.
Oh no.
Whereas these, once you're
You gotta
opened,
commit.
it's a commitment to the whole thing.
no.
So I've got to figure out how to like repackage all of these. But aren't they
Amazing.
pretty? They're so pretty.
Yeah, no, they look like absolute bullshit, but they look pretty.
Well, I guess I know what I'm going to be putting in your stocking for Christmas this year.
I'm just gonna wake up and you've sprinkled like glitter on my beard.
Okay, so how am I going to do that? Because you're sleeping. Am I going and sneaking into your house in England?
Yeah, you're sneaking in. No. When I come to visit and I'm with Aaron will let you in and he
That's
will
actually
let
true,
you
he would.
sprinkle glitter on my
He
beard.
super
He will let
would.
this happen.
Yeah. I still wouldn't do that because that's where you're sleeping
you-
and that's
hand
completely
on heart.
inappropriate.
Fair. Can you 100%? Okay, when I'm napping somewhere. If I'm napping, I feel
that's
like I'm free
100%.
game.
Oh, yeah.
uh-huh.
Because you nap
That's-
sitting in your work chair. I will look over when we're doing our co-work days and we're all on video together and you are like, quote unquote, thinking, but in actuality, you've just passed out
I
and you're
just kept
sitting
my
up.
notes on the inside of my eyelids. That's all. Have you seen beard baubles?
I'm
Speaking of
sorry?
Christmassy things. Beard baubles.
I really wish I knew what you were saying right now. Your accent is my favorite fucking thing, and I don't ever want this to come between us. And I'm not
But?
fucking with you at all. Will you say that again, but slower?
Beard
Beard.
baubles. Yeah.
I still don't know what this is. What the fuck is that? It's like
Baubles. Baubles. The things that you put on Christmas trees.
baubles?
Baubles. Baubles.
No. Baubles. I once researched an ergonomic chair, and because I don't know, an idiot, I was like the best one ever. And it was this really futuristic looking Borg-like thing that had independent moving pieces for like every vertebra. Have you seen
I'm worried
these
I'd
before?
get stuck in it.
No.
And it was sort of like this awkward, like arachnid sort of, I don't know, scorpion like head thing. And I'm like, yes, this is what and it was several $1,000s. I mean, just instantly too much.
It's one of those
money.
things that sounds like in theory it would be perfect, but then when you actually use it for more than a day, it's just as bad as every other chair.
It feels like a horror show to me. I would get stuck in it.
Yeah.
As relevant as that is to Star Trek.
It could be.
I mean, I guess they did change the chairs on the Enterprise because, like, Geordi and Data were like way the heck leaning back in season 1 and 2, and then they uprighted them in like season.
Yeah, I feel like they do a lot of both official and unofficial refits and retrofits, even when the ship doesn't explode for theatrical purposes.
And still no seatbelts. Still
No. Except for one, there's 3 occasions where seatbelts were used in Star Trek. One was in Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah.
Because that was before, I suppose, they realized they just had inertial dampers. And they had like a harness that was used on, I think, one of the shuttle pods. And then in Star Trek The Motion Picture, when they go to warp for the first time, Captain Kirk has these little clasps that like click down over
it's on the
his
arm.
legs.
The arms of the chair come across his legs.
Yeah, sort of clip him in place almost like a roller coaster.
Which is terrible. Like that just means that your legs are fine. Your torso is gone. It's in the view screen.
Yeah. And then the third occasion was in a deleted scene for, I believe, Nemesis. You can look it up online. There's Captain Picard is admiring his new command chair and installed on the Sovereign class Enterprise E. And then like someone says, "Oh, you haven't seen all the features yet." And then he like sits down and they press a button and 5 seatbelts shoot out and connect around him at all times. And he says something like, "It's about time."
That's amazing.
What you don't know, Aaron, is that this has been
words,
one of
know
the
them.
things
Don't
that
pretend like
I
you
look
don't.
for as someone who doesn't understand
Inertial dampener.
dampener thing. Because Inertia. No, is it an? I don't. It's a.
It's referred to both as inertial
the N.
dampeners and depending on what episode you're watching. The physics term is inertial dampers, but I think some writer somewhere along the line misheard that and just called them dampeners, which makes more sense linguistically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So either way, you're correct.
Yeah, and I learned about them because I brought it up. I was frustrated watching. I think it was even in Picard when we started this podcast, as I was beginning to learn Star Trek. And I was like, "Where are the seatbelts?" And because they're just like standing up.
I mean, my guess is that that derives going all the way back to the original series, where they had just this big stage set that I think that in order to make it look dynamic, they needed Captain Kirk constantly standing up and striding over and thinking,
dominating
and
people with his leg. Yeah.
and that just created this whole sort of subgenre of science fiction of explaining why he can do that on a ship that travels faster than light.
Captain's Pod Stardate. Oh, Jesus Christ. I haven't got you on screen, so I didn't even expect you to do that. On screen.